A chilling truth lurks behind the world's earliest abduction case, and it's far more disturbing than anything science fiction dared to imagine. One man's terror on a desolate Brazilian night would shatter the meaning of human boundaries forever. A black and endless sky pressed down on the quiet farmland outside São Francisco de Sales. There, alone among the fields, 23-year-old Antônio Vilas Boas tried to find rest. The air was thick with the vibrations of insects. Yet tonight, those familiar noises seemed to pulse over a deeper anxiety, one that coiled inside Antonio's chest and refused to loosen its grip. In the darkness, even the walls of his small room felt porous, as if something from outside might slip right through. Beside him, his brother João slept uneasily. Antonio's thoughts drifted, half lost in old farm routines, half haunted by a nameless dread. He could not know that, before dawn, the world he understood would be destroyed by visitors that came without warning and without mercy. Suddenly, a searing silver glow ignited the yard outside Antonio's window. The source was invisible, as if the earth itself had begun to burn with unnatural light. Antonio's heart slammed against his ribs. Every instinct screamed to hide, but his eyes refused to look away. The fear was almost physical, a cold, sharp pressure that made his fingers tremble. He rushed to the window as the light grew brighter, spreading in a perfect, impossible circle across the ground. Beside him, João woke, drawn into the same silent terror. They flung the shutters closed, but it was useless. The light sliced through the gaps, then down between the roof tiles, bathing the room in a spectral glow. For a moment, time stretched and froze. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the light vanished, leaving the brothers cloaked in silence far more dreadful than before. The night air was heavy as Antonio worked alone, his tractor slicing through the dark fields. Suddenly, a fierce red light blasted across the horizon, piercing the sky like a burning ember falling from another world. It hovered just above the ground, glowing so bright it seared his eyes. Antonio's heart thundered. Each attempt to approach was met by the light snapping away like a predator taunting its prey. 20 desperate tries, and the thing didn't relent. It pulsed, it shot rays in every direction, turning the familiar farmland into a place of haunting suspicion. Shadows lengthened, the night seemed to close in, every nerve screamed, this was no normal star, but a relentless, otherworldly hunter. Then, as if summoned by his rising panic, the red star morphed into a massive egg-shaped craft, descending with terrifying grace only meters above his tractor. Light flooded the field, brighter than day, flushing every blade of grass with an eerie red glow. Antonio was rooted in place, each panic-fueled breath catching in his throat. Purple lights glittered like cold jewels, metal spikes jutted from its front like weapons, and a shallow dome spun slowly atop the vessel, an ominous sentinel of mechanical life. The ground trembled as a metallic tripod extended, folding beneath the craft like giant spider legs taking hold. His tractor sputtered and died, the power drained away by that alien presence. He tried to flee, but before he could take more than a few steps, hands, cold and firm, grabbed his arm, pulling him into a fate darker than any nightmare. Before Antonio could take more than a few steps, a firm, cold grip seized his arm. He spun around, heart hammering in his chest, panic igniting every nerve. The figure was unlike anything alive, clad head to toe in a thick gray suit, helmet hiding all but piercing blue eyes that stared down at him with an unreadable, alien coldness. Then came others, taller, imposing, silent but for clicks and yelps that cut through the night air. They grabbed him effortlessly, lifting his struggling body off the ground. Desperation warred with paralysis. The sensation of helplessness was suffocating. Each shout, each wrench against their grip, drew their curious gaze, as if they studied his fear as much as his flesh. He was no longer on Earth, he was a captive of unknown masters. Antonio was thrust inside a room of cold, shining metal. The walls gleamed with a sterile, unnatural light that made his skin crawl. The air smelled faintly of burning paint, smoky and suffocating. The room was small, unnervingly compact, every inch polished to a clinical shine that mocked his fear. Heavy silence swallowed his voice as alien figures guided him forward, 5 of them, moving with robotic precision but unnatural grace. With no warning, he was forced to strip, his modesty shredded, replaced by a mounting dread. One being approached with a damp sponge and smeared a strange, slick liquid over his skin. Cold seared through his body as the door sealed shut behind him, vanishing into the flawless metal wall without a trace. The nightmare had only just begun. Antonio's body was no longer his own. The beings moved with clinical detachment, led by ominous silence and slow, barking yelps echoing through the glossy metal chambers. They forced him onto a cold, sterile table, glowing panels casting biting light across his trembling skin. Tubes were pressed to his chin, siphoning thick, dark fluid with eerie suction. The pain was foreign, cold and numbing, yet burning in places unseen. His protests were met with blank stares and strange, jerky gestures, as if his humanity was nothing more than a specimen under study. Every moment was a cruel blend of violation and curiosity, the line between science and torment blurred beneath harsh, unfeeling lights. Then she appeared. Naked and radiant, yet impossibly alien. Her white skin gleamed under the pale red light, flawless but strange. Her hair, bleached blonde and curling inward like a living flame, framed a face both beautiful and unsettling. Those elongated, downward slanting blue eyes, immense, filled with a sharp intelligence and something wild, held Antonio captive. Her armpit and pubic hair were startlingly blood red, freckles scattered along her arms like the stars outside the craft's windows. She moved with a grace that felt less human, more animal. Her soft grunts punctuated the air as she embraced him, rubbing her head against his face, sparking a strange, overpowering arousal. The act that followed was both intimate and mechanical, leaving Antonio confused, terrified, and irrevocably marked by the unthinkable truth she gestured to come, a child born of 2 worlds, destined to change everything. After what felt like an eternity, Antonio was released back onto the cold earth. The night was silent except for his ragged breaths, weakened and shaking. His tractor's battery was dead, a cold reminder of the power drained by that alien machine. He was covered in strange marks, bruises that itched and burned with a pain no medicine could touch. His body felt foreign, heavy with exhaustion, and his mind swirled with a storm of confusion and fear. He was changed, and he knew it. Marks that stayed for months, memories that refused to fade. The world he returned to no longer felt his own, swallowed by a shadow of what had happened in those metal chambers. Days stretched into weeks, but the trauma clung to Antonio like a second skin. Nausea gripped him, headaches shattered his sleep. The exhaustion wasn't just physical, it seeped into his soul, dragging him into a deep, unrelenting fog. Nightmares replayed the chilling events, jolting him awake in cold sweat again and again. Paranoia crept in, the relentless fear of unseen eyes watching, waiting. His family noticed the change, he became distant, silent, a man haunted by the impossible. The wounds on his skin were just the surface of a deeper torment. Antonio's life was forever marked, not only by what the aliens did to his body, but by the monstrous doubt and terror that had taken root in his mind. Antonio's story was met with skepticism, disbelief, and ridicule. Friends and neighbors whispered doubts, the press dismissed him as a fantasist. Yet, he clung to his truth with stubborn resolve. His obsession with understanding what happened consumed him, isolating him from a world that refused to believe. Each retelling was a desperate plea for validation, a man haunted by a nightmare no one wanted to accept. Beneath the surface of terror lay a darker suspicion, these encounters weren't random. Antonio felt like a pawn in a vast, cold experiment, an alien agenda probing human genetics and hybridization. The idea that he wasn't alone in this nightmare, that others may suffer quietly, gnawed at him. What was the true purpose of these abductions? And what was to become of the children born from them? The story of Antônio Vilas Boas echoed far beyond the fields of Minas Gerais, marking the dawn of a new, darker chapter in ufology. His tale shattered naive notions of alien encounters and introduced a chilling new reality, the possibility of hybridization, of aliens breeding with humans. Though met with disbelief and controversy, his story became a grim blueprint for decades of abduction reports worldwide. Scientists dismissed it, skeptics mocked it, yet the shadows remain. Antonio's experience persists as a stark reminder: the boundary between humanity and the unknown is thinner than we dare to imagine, and somewhere in the darkness, secrets older than time might still be unfolding. If the mysteries beyond human understanding intrigue you and you crave deeper dives into the darkest corners of extraterrestrial secrets, subscribe now to Beyond the Sky. Join a community unafraid to explore the unknown, where every story pulls back the curtain on chilling truths lurking just beyond our reach. Hit the bell, stay vigilant, and be the first to unravel the enigmas that haunt our skies. Your journey beyond the ordinary starts here.